Welcome back to New Rockstars. This is The Big Question, the show that gives you too much information about the tiny things that live inside us forever. Hey, I'm referring, of course, to the quantum realm in the MCU. I'm Erik Voss here with Tommy Bechtold. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, Erik. How are you?
I'm hanging in. I'm
All
hanging
right.
out, hanging in. We're both missing Philip, but he'll
Yes.
show back up again.
He's with us. Speaking of things that are always inside you,
Oh my God.
a little bit of Philip is inside each one of us.
You gotta stop taking those pills that he gives you. You don't know what he puts in those.
Phil pills. They're great.
Pills. They are not the sponsor of today's episode.
They're blue chews. They're the same as blue chews.
Well, we just finished our Infinity Saga rewatch of Ant-Man and the Wasp, a movie that I very much enjoyed because it explored to date the most unexplained and confusing aspect of the MCU, the quantum realm, you know, with its inconsistent logic and rules for how fast you age in it. It's wonderful. So let's talk about this episode, Tommy. What's the big question?
All right. Get yourself ready. The big question today is, how does the quantum realm work exactly? Why does Janet age differently from Scott? And are there any rules to it? Or is this just an anything goes wild, wild west scenario?
It seems like a bit of that, Tommy, because I have studied the MCU quantum realm enough to justify a doctorate thesis at this point. In fact, I should get honorary degrees from every university for the amount of freaking research I've done.
I agree. I have, there's got to be some way we can get you honored.
Well, I have concluded as a result of my research that the quantum realm is Marvel's big gaping plot hole that they just keep throwing shit into to pull off even crazier bullshit, and we just don't question it because it's called quantum, as if that matters. So a bit of history on the quantum realm. It was first, of course, introduced in Ant-Man when Hank Pym described it as...
It means that you would enter a quantum realm.
What does that mean?
It means that you would enter a reality where all concepts of time and space become irrelevant as you shrink for all eternity.
At the time, though, we should remember that Hank only had a limited understanding of the quantum realm. That was just his warning of it. But really, it's far more complex than he even realized at that point. Why is it called the quantum realm? Well, the quantum realm was the MCU name for what's known as the microverse or microworld subatomica in the Marvel comics. It's revisited a couple times and it's kind of given different names, but they had to call it quantum realm because in 2015, the Marvel microverse was the property of different studios. Some believe it was owned by Paramount because they had the Micronauts, or it might have been a Fox property because of its association with the Fantastic Four. Microworld is often visited by the Fantastic Four and their related characters in the comics. It's like one of their settings. And they use the term quantum because screenwriters love to pay Stanford nerds to come in and consult on their movies, and they hear words like quantum and they think, oh sure, we'll just call it that. And the Stanford consultant's like, whatever, I get to buy a Lexus with my Disney money! And no one questions it. Yeah. Remember the movie Quantum of Solace? What the hell did that title mean?
It meant confusing movie title to me. I had no grasp of that at all.
Like, that movie seemed like Daniel Craig was trying to figure out what quantum means the whole time. Well, the concept, as described in the Ant-Man movies, is that once you shrink to a subatomic level, the uncertainty of quantum physics makes the impossible possible. So, like, time is no longer measurable, phase shifting now is possible, and of course, there are time vortexes that allow time travel. We'll get to those. But we get a nice clarification in Doctor Strange. So Strange briefly passes through what is actually the quantum realm during that movie's magical mystery tour sequence, and the Ancient One's voiceover calls it an example of
worlds without end. Some benevolent and life-giving.
So this would suggest that the quantum realm is not just a smaller plane of existence that spans everywhere in our universe. Rather, it's like a separate parallel dimension to our dimension that's just accessible through extreme subatomic shrinking. So it's like when you shrink that far, you go through like a portal, and now you access this other dimension that exists alongside us.
Okay.
Don't say okay as if you get that, because I don't get it. I don't think any of us really get it.
You know what it made me think of when you learn about cells, animal cells and plant cells, and how they have different molecular walls, and like how certain cells on a plant are spaced further apart so things can move in and out. I'm sure that has nothing to do with it, but very briefly, I felt smart. So go ahead and leave in the comments why I'm wrong and why what I just said makes no sense.
See, Tommy and I are both applying episodes of the Magic School Bus to this, where they were able to shrink small enough and walk in between cells and ride white blood cells around. I think that's what happened. They would suffocate immediately from the air molecules functioning differently.
What's that?
Girl, that's a booty hole.
All of them would have blood clots and
Ralphie and Arnold wouldn't last 5 seconds. So the reason I brought up the Sorcerer Supreme is because they're actually the one guru source that we can really trust in the MCU. Like, remember in Endgame, the time travel logic in that movie is all over the place. It's self-contradictory. It's coming from sources like Pymtech, from Stark Tech. Bruce Banner tries to figure it out. None of them can really agree on how it really works until Bruce Banner talks to the Ancient One, and she gives him that nice, handy timeline of this is what happens when you branch reality. And between the two of them, they give us a pretty good understanding of how time travel works. So that is basically Marvel saying, okay, you know what? The scientists in our universe are all coming from different points, but the wizards are smarter than the scientists. So listen to the wizards. Tommy, you asked, are there rules? And I think we can boil down 5 rules of the quantum realm so far in the MCU. So let's run through those rules.
All right.
Rule number 1 is you have to access the quantum realm with Pymtech, with Pym particles. So entry and exiting from the realm basically has 2 components. It needs a quantum tunnel that is fueled by Pym particles that are triggered by the pilot, by the person going into the realm. And you can stumble into the quantum realm by accident.
Not a good idea to stumble in drunk off the beach or something. You're going to want to know what you're doing.
You could luck out by just like loosely shoving a Pym disc in your belt buckle and crossing your fingers, like Scott Lang did to get out of it. But that's ill-advised. It's an exception to the rule, we think.
Only the charmingly befuddled Paul Rudd could fall ass backwards into that solution.
Exactly. We do need Pym particles. That is the magic fuel that allows you to access this. And really any era of it, because we saw Cap using 1970 Pym vials. So clearly those things are not enough of a beta prototype. They work. They help you get in and out. And we also can deduce that Pym particles can be replicated and reverse engineered. So in Endgame, the 2014 era Thanos steals Good Nebula's Pym vial, but he's able to get his whole fleet and army to the present day. How did he do that? Well, the movie's filmmakers were like, they can reverse engineer it. They're smart enough to use a 3D printer to make more of it.
Cull Obsidian is just in the lab, like with like a montage, like walking on Sunshine's playing as he's like, it blows up in his face.
Ebony Maw's just like, you idiot!
Then they start trying on dresses.
Nah. So rule number 2, the quantum realm has what I call tricky physics in all kinds of ways, but really the physical properties are unstable and uncertain. They're applying things like the Heisenberg uncertainty principle and quantum mechanics that once you're trying to measure things on that subatomic level, they don't always follow our normal physics. Particles can appear in the same place at the same time. You can't really measure it. So the way they apply in the MCU is that bodies and particles can kind of shift in and out of phases of matter, like the character of Ghost. She got hit with a blast of energy from the quantum realm, and then she gained this power of her body phase shifting through surfaces. You know, like she can turn into a ghost or like a projection of herself, and that ends up like making her unstable, and they have to try to fix her by the end of the movie. But it is worth noting that based on Hank and Janet's brief time together in the quantum realm, it seems like gravity exists and some version of air is breathable. Which doesn't make sense, Tommy, because they're between atoms and electrons. You need O2 molecules to be able to breathe and oxygenate your blood so you don't immediately suffocate and die.
I think they can reverse engineer it, Eric. I think.
Yeah, they could just reverse engineer it.
That's going to be my answer to anything way above my intelligence. Is just reverse engineer it.
And anyone in the comments saying we're thinking too hard about it, you know.
Shame on you!
First off, this is the big question. It's a show where we think too hard about everything.
We have important work to do.
But also, if they didn't want us to overthink it, they shouldn't have had scientists spend the whole movie explaining the functionality of all this. If it was just something like that we're using using Asgardian sorcery, it's our Asgardian science, or the science of the Sorcerer Supreme, we buy it as just magic. I would even say like Wakanda's science is just more mystical in a way.
Right.
We're just more willing to suspend our disbelief. But if you have like scientists who spend all their time in a lab being the authorities on this, of course they're going to question it and get confused.
Agreed.
Rule number 3, Tommy. This is the big one, time. How does time work? Well, time does exist in the quantum realm. It flows normally because Janet Van Dyne was down there and she aged 30 years.
I'm not the same woman I was 30 years ago, Henry.
But why did Scott only perceive it as 5 hours and went 5 years into the future? Well, it's because within the quantum realm are separate holes called time vortexes. They're separate. These are what the Avengers used in the time heist, not just quantum realm in general, but within the quantum realm, separate things called the time vortexes. We know they're separate from Janet's warning to Scott in the post-credit scene. She said,
And don't get sucked into a time vortex. We won't be able to save you.
so in other words, while you're down there in the broader quantum realm, don't fall into this separate thing called a time vortex. Wasn't really clarified in Endgame, but that's what Scott did. He spent 5 hours in there. Towards the end of that 5 hours, he slipped into a time vortex, and then that savior rat reactivated the Van Tech to pull him back out.
Savior Rat is my favorite New Mutant. All the Savior Rat comics, even the weird ones, even the Todd McFarlane issues are precious to me. So time vortexes are like, I call them time slides. They're like different water slides you can dip into. And you never know. Some water slides are terrifying, straight down. Others are the windy kind. You can go on with a friend in an inner tube. Maybe try and catch a smooch if it's a lovely lady or gentleman, depending on your preference.
Hey, those tunnels are dark. You don't know who you hopped on the raft with.
Yeah, just pucker up and let it rip. That's what I always say.
Because you did the single rider line,
Yeah.
and because you wanted to skip that line, your friends didn't want to go with you, so hopefully they partner a lady with you. Yeah, I went to Wild Waters. I know how that works.
Water parks are a great place to take a lover. I've always said that.
Also a great place to like injure yourself and go into a lazy river full of pee.
A lot of urine in the water, a lot of rashes on the arm, yeah.
So Janet was there for 3 decades. What did she do? How did she survive that long? Well, that brings us to rule number 4. The quantum realm must sustain life. So the quantum realm consists of these quantum healing particles. This is what Janet used to repair Ghost's phase shifting. And that might be what the Ancient One meant by benevolent and life-giving. It's possible that Janet never needed to eat or consume anything for nourishment. Maybe her hunger was just satisfied with these healing particles that nourished her life force for this full time. Also, Janet described her survival as a kind of evolution to Hank Pym, suggesting that her sustained exposure to the quantum realm energy changed her DNA.
Adaptation is part of it, but some of it is evolution.
Not to get all, biology 101 with you, but technically that would be adaptation. Evolution requires several generations of reproducing species to pass on their competitive traits to their offspring, but Marvel has ruined what actual evolution is.
Yeah.
Evolution doesn't happen within one living creature over the course of their lifetime, but whatever. Also, huge detail, probably the biggest clue that has not been explored and hopefully will be explored in Ant-Man 3. There was a city, there's a freaking city hidden in the background of the quantum realm as Janet and Hank leave it. It's hard to spot, but you can see skyscrapers that appear to be in some kind of dome bubble. Now, presumably, this civilization was the source of Janet's new clothes. Like, she was wearing a cloak and a staff. Where'd she get those? She didn't go down in there with them.
No.
And presumably, she's already told Hank all about this. Like, maybe when they showed up at Tony Stark's funeral, the camera just didn't linger on them long enough for Michelle Pfeiffer to grab the camera and be like, this is how I lived.
She hasn't shut up about it. She's like, and you
Yeah.
gotta go to the city. And friendly Hank Pym's just like, shut up! Shut up! I can't go to the city! I can't go!
Those follow-up questions, it's insane that they were not included in the final act of Ant-Man and the Wasp. The final act should have just been everyone sitting around Michelle Pfeiffer in their living room, and she's like, okay, so year 4 is when I got that staff.
Yeah.
And I got it
On sale.
by pulling a bone out of a tardigrade.
Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
No.
Now, in the comics, Micro World does actually contain civilizations and planets even Dr. Doom lives down there for a period. He rules a planet called Mirrorwood. There's the Lizardmen of the planet Talk that are down there. The Fantastic Four team up with Hank Pym. They later team up with Scott Lang. They venture into it. There's villains like Baron Karza and Psycho Man coming from there. There's a lot of people hanging out down there. One theory that I've seen that I think is interesting is that the ruler of that hidden city could have been Kang the Conqueror, given its proximity to Tommy's time slides.
Yes.
And maybe he's like the seasoned navigator and he's like, you want to go into the time vortex, do you? Well, I know. Hey, this slide will take you out by the lazy river. This slide will take you out by the entrance. Yeah. So if you want to go because you ripped your bathing suit, you can get a new one at the gift shop.
Chicken fingers and fries are half off on Thursdays.
He's Kang the Conqueror is just a lifeguard.
Yeah.
This is a summer job for him, but he's getting lots of tail.
His name tag just says Brett.
Furthermore, on this point of life in the quantum realm, wildlife does exist in the quantum realm. Tardigrades, these little water bears. And Tommy, this doesn't make any sense because tardigrades are real biological creatures.
Yes.
But their size, they're way bigger in real life. They range from 0.1 millimeter to 1.5 millimeter. They're visible with the naked eye. They're not subatomic. Presumably, here's my theory to justify this. I think Janet, when she was first shrunk and went down to the quantum realm in the 80s, she also grabbed a couple tardigrades with her as she was shrinking, maybe threw some Pym discs on those.
Handfuls of tardigrades.
Yeah, she was just trying to latch on to something, and they shrunk down with her, and then they now mated and populated the quantum realm as their cattle.
Tardigrade.
And our final rule, the quantum realm can affect and be affected by events in our dimension and vice versa. So, I mentioned how the flow of time is the same unless you go into a time vortex. Well, Janet was able in real time to communicate with Scott, planting a memory in his mind, and he just thought it was like a strange dream. But then later she inhabited his body, putting an antenna in his head, like Patrick Swayze and Whoopi Goldberg in Ghost. You in danger, Hank Pym. And it was just this weird thing. But that was all in real time, like your next door neighbor putting their mind in yours. They're parallel. Also, we found out finally that Scott Lang was vulnerable to Thanos' snap. He just got lucky. According to the Russos, he was lucky that he wasn't one of the ones dusted by the snap. But he could have disintegrated. And really, if you think about it, the whole universe was lucky because Scott's survival in the quantum realm was the thing that led to our discovery of these time slides that allowed them to steal the Infinity Stones from the past and reverse everything. So, in conclusion, Tommy, the quantum realm, I believe, is just a randomness land that so far just exists to justify whatever crazy bullshit the MCU wants to do. It'd be fine if they embrace the magic and sorcery side of it, but they keep trying to use science.
It's science.
To make it make sense. And really, they're moving the goalposts constantly on those scientific limits and what the rules are on it. So instead of a cool cavern of mystery that it could be, currently it's just like a plot hole factory that just clogs our mailbox with questions, which we're happy to answer.
Gives us a purpose, which I appreciate. It reminds me of when you have a generally clean apartment, but there is that one closet that you've just said, screw it, and you throw everything into. So there's cookware, sporting goods, old t-shirts, a bowling ball, all of your files from your taxes for 5 years. There's just no rhyme or reason to
Props
the closet.
for your sketch team that you bought for that 1 month you needed a Knight of Armor chest plate that you thought you would get 3 uses out of and never got another one.
My Kylo Ren mask and massive sword that I gave you that I have never returned to recover.
I think I still have it. I keep trying to find you to give it back.
It's not your fault. It's my fault completely. I'm this part. I was thinking about it the other day because I needed the Kylo Ren mask for a bit thing.
Oh no!
But I didn't need it. When I say need it, an idea occurred to me for 5 seconds where I was like, "Oh, I can have my roommates send me my Kylo Ren mask and do a sketch." But I don't. This is something we can solve off the air and another time. But I just feel bad because I'm I've had Erik just lugging around a sword and mask years, probably a year and a half now. Oh my god, insane. Anyway,
we interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
I don't know what's real or not. Just like you don't know whether it's real if that bulge in the front pocket is an actual wallet or not because you got a Ridge. By the way, thanks to the Ridge Wallet for sponsoring this episode. The Ridge helps you carry what you need every day, from their flagship Ridge Wallet to their portable portable charging commuter backpack, they want you to make the most out of what you're bringing with you. The Ridge wallet is made out of military-grade materials like titanium carbon fiber. It has a clean, stylish design. It is chainsaw-proof. Yes, someone tried to fight this with a chainsaw and they lost. This one is their matte cobalt wallet. They do have other colors, including some very flashy tiki designs. It is light, it's strong. If you're wearing jeans like I always do and you're running through the rain, the blue from your jeans just blends in with the blue of the cobalt. I love this thing. Woo! Ridge makes it easy to buy with free shipping and free returns and a lifetime guarantee. It's got 30,000 5-star reviews, so you know they're doing something right. They also have great backpacks and travel bags with RFID blocking pockets and optional device charging batteries. Get 10% off today with free worldwide shipping and returns by going to ridge.com/newrockstars. That's ridge.com/newrockstars and use the code newrockstars. Find the link in the video's description.
And now, our feature presentation.
All right, let's move on to some more bite-sized questions that Tommy's gonna take for us. Tommy, you ready?
I'm ready. I'm hungry. Hungry for knowledge.
I'm ready.
See, Aaron Mike asks, why did Cap, Natasha, and Scott go to Tony Stark first in Endgame when if they recruited Bruce Banner first, they might have had better luck convincing Tony?
You know, Eric, that's a great question. As always, when I'm posed with fantastic questions, I go to the internet.
Take a spin, now you're in with the techno set. You're going surfing on the internet.
Hey, frogs! And I had come up with a very nuanced answer about Captain America and Iron Man playing kind of four-dimensional chess with each other and like Captain America trying to goad the best out of Tony Stark. But in the end, the good old internet provides us with the actual answer to this question, which is in an interview with the screenwriters, Marcus and McFeely, they simply said they needed to go to Tony Stark first so that he could refuse the call and kind of reject the Avengers, which he was responsible for originally, along with Nick Fury, assembling, only to be reminded of the great loss by seeing a picture of his surrogate son, Spider-Man, Peter Parker, and feel the compulsion to both problem solve and rejoin the Avengers. And so I think, yeah, it just comes down to screenwriting 101. You know, the hero needs to have some adversity before seizing his ultimate destiny and a crisis of faith, if you will. And Tony Stark was questioning his place in the universe, and it's way more interesting to have him initially say, I'm out. I'm not helping anymore. I'm just going to accept the fact that half of the universe is gone. Leveling yourself with grief, a situation of loss where you just kind of, the acceptance, they say, is often important. When it's a metaphysical, universal snap destroying half of all life, I think the acceptance of loss can be a little more pliable than if, you know, your cat gets hit by a fire truck or something. Like, that's you're probably not going to be able to get him back with a time slide as much as you want.
Especially when it was firemen who hit it. They're unimpeachable.
They're just so hunky. Anyone that can get away with suspenders and no shirt underneath. Good Lord.
I don't know. Mr. November was driving. Oh, I'm not going to bring a lawsuit against him.
I'm not even mad. I'm actually just kind of happy to get a chance to talk to him. All right, so yeah, so the answer just comes down to a technical decision made by the screenwriters.
And you know what? Yeah, I think that's a great answer. And sometimes characters just aren't at the top of their intelligence. They're just so excited to try to reach out to the first person they'd want to talk to without really thinking of like the strategy or the game plan of which order they're going to talk to people. Yeah. Characters are human, you know. They don't always have a God's eye view of everything.
You want to run and tell Dad. Tony is like the papa. He's the Philip of that group, you know. They want to run to tell their father, get his both approval of the mission and his participation. So yeah.
Next bite size, MIT Hun or MitHun619PV asks, what happens if Deadpool or Wolverine are decapitated?
This is a fun one. First of all, you got to remember two things. Deadpool regenerates. Wolverine heals. So in Deadpool 2, when he's grief-stricken over his gorgeous girlfriend's assassination, Deadpool attempts to explode himself up, and we see his head completely detached from everything else, including a middle finger, and then in the next scene he's healed and he has regrown. In the comics, his head gets cut off all the time. A baby's body will dangle down from it. If you decapitate Deadpool, it's like Deadpool, you like clipping a fingernail for him. The fingernail's growing back. So he, unfortunately, if you're looking to kill Deadpool, you're going to have to get more creative than decapitation because he will regenerate.
Okay, so he's like a starfish.
Like Patrick Star.
No! This is Patrick!
But Wolverine is a little more complicated because there doesn't seem to be a consensus. You know, Wolverine has healing factors. In Civil War, literally he gets burned all the way down to his adamantium skeleton and then regenerates from just a skull and bones, but he never gets decapitated. In another, I believe, Ultimate Marvel comic book, they have his head literally hanging by a couple of muscle fibers, and he heals. So it appears as though they're suggesting if he were to become completely decapitated, he would actually die, but they never prove that. And in another issue of Ultimate Marvel, Nick Fury explains to a different Dimensions Wolverine that in his dimension, they actually cut Wolverine's head off and deprived it of oxygen, and all the head did was go into stasis until they supplied it with oxygen again, and then it began to live and succeed on its own. Now, he won't regrow a body, but if you cut his head off, it will continue to stay alive. So there's not a clear-cut answer. It appears as though the majority of the comic books would have you believe if his head is separated from his body, he will die, but there are literal Marvel series that have it explained that if you cut his head off, he won't. So it's kind of one of those things where pick which run of a Wolverine character you're getting and roll the dice on whether or not you'd cut his head off. I wouldn't mess with him either way because I love him. He's Canadian.
Yep, I think the answer to that one is Deadpool obviously is okay because he can always regenerate. But
Yes.
Wolverine, now that he's going to probably be joining the MCU, a PG-13 world, and isn't Deadpool who gets that exception for him, probably won't have such gruesomeness happen to him anyway. All right, moving on to our third and final bite-size. Antisocial Kid X asks, would Tony Stark have died when he snapped against Thanos if he was wearing his Hulkbuster armor?
This is a great question, and this was a lot of fun to look up because at first I was really like, yeah, this is kind of like the Jerry Seinfeld, why not make the whole airplane out of the black box?
It's the only thing that survives a crash. Why don't they build the whole plane out of the black box?
I know. I mean, that's right.
If Hulk can snap the gauntlet and use the time stones and not be destroyed with the Hulkbuster, but the thing you have to remember is the Hulkbuster is not a replica of Hulk. It's something meant to battle Hulk. It's supposed to replicate the indestructible nature of Hulk, but from physical, tangible forces, getting hit, getting blasted with missiles and bullets, and being able to fall from great heights, being able to be thrown up against, immovable objects, but it's not immune to gamma radiation. It's not lead lined. That would make it way too heavy, even with hydraulic lifts and the things that make the Iron Man suit able to, probably weigh more than Tony Stark and still fly and move all around. To actually build an entire Hulkbuster suit out of lead, it would just be completely impractical. It would be like having Incredible Hulk with concrete around his ankles that actually somehow stopped him and that he wouldn't break through. And Hulk himself says, when he's Smart Hulk, when he snaps everyone back, he says, I was literally made for this, because he can absorb the gamma radiation. He's made from gamma radiation. So the reason the Hulk suit would not save Tony Stark is maybe he would have lived longer, maybe he would have sustained less damage, but ultimately I believe he would have had what would be a lethal dose of gamma radiation. And even if he had lived more than just a day, it wouldn't have been more than a month beyond that he would have lived. So I think temporarily it could have maybe extended his life, but he would not have been able to survive.
We saw Chernobyl. We know the timeline after you get exposed to that stuff.
No! God, please, no!
Tony should be happy he died as quickly as he did.
I think for merciful deaths, that was probably easier, yes, for sure.
All right, well, thank you everyone for submitting those questions. We have time for one more mailbag question. Let's see, here we go. What is the worst job or gig that you had?
I have really had so many jobs in my life. I started working when I was 14, and from that point on, I've usually had 2 or 3 jobs. Most of them have been fantastic, but I really think my first job ever was my worst job. I worked on a farm. The hours were crazy. It was like 5 a.m. till whenever they decided you could go. I made $4.55 an hour. I had to get a work permit from Wegmans, the grocery store, that would allow me to work as a 14-year-old. My parents had to sign, and my job was literally bagging 10-pound bags of potatoes, weighing them, making sure they were exactly 10 pounds, as if I had any control over how to make a potato that, without cutting it, weigh less than... So basically, like, somehow Jengaing in a dozen potatoes or whatever to make a 10-pound bag of potatoes, all while being yelled at by the absolutely insane owner of the farm. Also, the migrant workers that were far ahead of me and had been working there for years and just didn't like anyone coming in, let alone like a little white kid. So it was like I was fighting a real uphill battle, and I was not little, but you know what I mean. I just remember I did it for way too long, way like months and months and months, and finally one day, just getting sick of getting yelled at, I took a bag of potatoes and I tossed them at the guy who was in charge of me, sealed up, and then he caught them, and I ran while he was so surprised that they were there. I ran out the front door, and I ran about a half a mile all the way to where I lived, away from the farm, and I was, like, so sure that, like, the cops were going to come, as if there would be a real reaction. Like, I hid, like, I was in a crouch in my living room, like, in a defensive pose, like, when the cops burst through, I'm going to fight my way out, and, you know... It was true insanity, but that job really broke me mentally. So I remember running away, and I remember being like, my parents are going to kill me, and then both being like, you should have quit that months ago. They're like, we were really impressed that you stuck with it, but like, what a horrible job. So
I love how parents, like, they know that we're taking these shit jobs, but they just kind of let us discover how bad it is ourselves, so that you know, it builds character and we learn to make different choices.
For sure. And it also taught me that I could really, if the circumstances around the job mattered enough, I could put up, I mean, I've put up with some real stinkers of jobs in LA, like horrible bosses I've worked for production companies that are just psychopaths. And I'm like, nothing is worse than bagging potatoes. I'm sitting at a desk. At least I'm at a computer desk, occasionally checking Instagram in between these like crazy, you know, entitled rants from these people. Like, nothing is as bad as that manual labor all day. So
mine's very, very similar. My worst job was my first job. And I was like around the same age. I was 15 or 16, and I worked at a Boy Scout summer camp, which I took the job because I had friends who had done it the previous summer. They're like, it's so great. You're a camp counselor. You're like king of this world. Everyone else is your age. And if you're in Boy Scouts, you get also to take merit badge classes and get to Eagle Scout faster. And the pay isn't great, but like you're getting food. It's like you're just camping all summer. It's great. I made the mistake of working in the dining hall, which is the one job there that actually sucks. Because you don't get to hang out. You're constantly working from like 6:45 in the morning through like 9:30 at night. And you get paid a day rate, and it's shit. I think we got paid a week rate. And I had that thing of when you get your first job and you don't get your actual first paycheck until like the pay period later. So it's like, I've been working for a month and I have nothing to show for it. And when you finally get it, it's like, here's $180 after a month.
It's so depressing.
Like, what?
You like look at your hands.
And then you go to the payroll guy and he's like, that's what it is.
We actually made a mistake. It was only supposed to be $160.
Yeah. He just tears off a quarter of the check and like, huh? But I remember, like you, the people who I worked for were all just kind of crazy because they were all overworked too, and they just picked these petty battles. At one point I was cutting carrots and I let it roll and it like cut my finger, but I still had to work the shift of working this pressure steam washer. It was like, I'm handling what's supposed to be sanitary things and I have a bloody cut in my finger. I'm doing my best to wrap it up, put a glove around it, but like steamy water is leaking down to the glove. At one point I lifted up my glove and it was just like a blood balloon around my hand. It was like, ah!
Oh, God.
And none of the other guys wanted to work the shift. They're like, it's your turn, Voss. You still have to do it.
Oh, my God.
But to me, the scariest part of the job was the first week actually wasn't that bad because they closed down the camp just to open it up to a couple Latter-day Saint troops. And it's just like 3 different Mormon troops of the nicest, sweetest kids in the world. They cleaned up after themselves. They were polite to you when they had to hand back their tray to the washroom. If they didn't want a food, they wouldn't have you put it on their tray because they didn't want to make the extra mess for you.
Right.
The nicest kids in the world. And I'm like, this is great. If this is how it is all summer, it's not that bad of a gig. Week 2, though, everything changed right away. And our dining hall director pulled me aside. She's like, Boss, you're going to have to set up the cereal bar in the morning, and you do not look them in the eye outside the window. And I said, why not? And she's like, you just do what I said, boy. And I was like, huh? So I go out there. It's like 7 in the morning. I'm just bleary-eyed, and I'm putting out the cereal and the milks and everything. And in the corner of my eye, I see an adult leader of one of the groups with his to-go coffee mug.
Oh, God.
And he's just staring at me, and I'm like, I'm not supposed to look at him, but then I make the mistake of looking over, and he points at his mug, because he wants, normally, like, each of the troops are supposed to be brought in at a specific order based off of, like, privileges and things like that. And he wanted special treatment to be brought in early to get coffee so that he could wake up and not have to wait 20 minutes to be brought in. And we're not allowed to do that. And she didn't tell me why. And I just look at him and I'm like, pretending like I couldn't hear him. But I could totally hear him. It's like half an inch of glass. And he's like, hey, let me in. I want to get coffee. And I just had to ignore him. And then, like, he stood there watching me as I was setting up the cereal bar. And he just, like, wraps the mug against the window like Freddy Krueger. Just, like, dragging it back and forth. Then I have to go work the line of scooping eggs onto his tray. And he says, he's like, hey, you saw me. Why didn't you let me in? And I said, I was told not to. And he said, who told you? And I look over at my dining hall director and she just like shakes her head like, do not rat me out. It is your job to take the fall for this. I'm like, it's policy. And then he treated me like shit for the rest of the week. And he told all of his troop to not bother cleaning up their mess. Like,
oh my God.
Leave your tray there. It's the help's job to pick it up. Like, it was the worst. This man in his 40s. Yeah. But I'm telling you, like, with their Boy Scouts, a lot of these adult leaders, they're not the best people. Some of them are really cool.
Yep,
some of them are just dads who get dragged into it, and they hate their job, and they had a rough time when they were enlisted in the Army, and now they're trying to, like, be mean to young boys who need tough love, and that's their whole value. And it's you know, it's a mixed bag.
Yeah, it's kind of sad. Got out of it, though, Eric. We survived.
Hey, look at us now! Getting paid to lose sleep and break down Marvel trailers.
That's right.
Hey, it did build character, you know?
Yeah.
I learned that I never want to go work that kind of job again.
And I learned that I can tell you exactly how much a group of potatoes weighs. Like, I'll let you know if it's more or less than 10 pounds. You get me a stack of potatoes, I'll tell you how much it weighs.
Well, hey, this has been great. That's our show. Reminder that you can join our official Discord by becoming a patron at patreon.com/newrockstars, and you can ask us these questions directly. We're more likely to see them on our Discord than we are on Twitter in the comments of videos. You can also get an audio version of the show by subscribing to New Rockstars Big Question wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks to Tommy for joining us and stepping in with those great stories.
My pleasure, Eric. Always a pleasure to get a chance to talk to you. Thank you for having me.
And now I will never throw a bag of potatoes at you because it will trigger you.
You can't use my tactics against me.
Thanks again to everyone for submitting questions. You can also mail us your questions at our P.O. Box. Follow me at EA Voss. Follow Tommy at Tommy Bechtold. And follow New Rockstars on social. Subscribe here on YouTube to get too much information on all the stuff you care about. See you next week.